the pandemic in Australia, for me, from my experience, maybe without exaggerating, maybe was one of the best times of my life.
Yeah.
The pandemic, the pandemic, that was a really tough time for most of the planet.
Yeah.
Most of the people around the world, they had a really tough time with this. For me, just because in the place I was doing volunteers and traveling all my way up from Sydney all the way to Brisbane.
Hmm.
Living with different families, living in the city, living in the countryside. Like literally, I live with wallabies. Like living between
Yeah.
wallabies for a week and a half. I live with horses for 1 month or two. Like literally making breakfast and lunch for horses every day. I got kicked by one horse, full strength. Nothing happened to me. I don't know how I managed to avoid that one. Um, but yeah, yeah. That 2020 ended up being an amazing accumulation of experiences, traveling a lot. And then after that, what did I do? I went back to Tasmania. Then I did Darwin, Adelaide. I traveled around the whole
Yeah.
place, the whole country. There's This country is a continent country. There's many things. There's many places to go, many cultures, different ways of live life, communities, everything. It's
It
just
it's really I I've been talking a lot with some friends about this recently. The Australia for us during that time period, it was amazing. We really had it so lucky being in such an isolated. We were in a bubble. We were really really lucky because people weren't coming in the country. They needed us. We could work in basically whatever job we wanted. You
yeah,
just
yeah,
got a
yeah.
connection, and you could get a really good job. And it was so free. It was so free for me. I didn't have to wear my first mask until the end of like 2021 or something. It was really. I was in Queensland, and then going down to Adelaide, we had to wear a mask there for some reason. It was just we were so fortunate, and we didn't even. I think we took it for granted sometimes, because we didn't know anything else. Obviously,
Yeah.
we were in contact with our families and our friends in other parts of the world, people who had gone back to Europe or South America, and they had to live the reality of the pandemic. We
Definitely,
heard
yeah.
stories, but we never had to experience that. We never had it difficult.
For us, I think in Australia, for us, most of Australia, the pandemic was on the news, but not on our lives.
Yeah, just Melbourne and Sydney.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then the rest of the country was just doing normal life. Keep an eye on the news and be aware of it, but from
Should be
far
alright.
away.
Should be
Hmm?
alright, mate.
Being alright, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, 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 yeah. And so after that, I think my thinking started to gravitate towards the residency and the long term when I moved to Perth. So I
Mhm.
moved to Perth. I started working in this in the mining industry in Western Australia. Australia mining is huge, and I started working there, uh, making better savings, and uh, and I start thinking, about my future. And something very important to highlight about Australia, in my experience, everywhere I've been, I may have lived in 6 different cities, I would say,
Yeah.
maybe more. Everywhere I lived in Australia, I always felt accepted, included, regardless the community, regardless the state.
Mhm.
And that feeling just went through all my experience here. and maybe that's why I started to feel that I could live here long term, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, moving to Perth, I think another sensation that you have from Perth is the most isolated city in the world.
Yeah.
It's just one city in the middle of nowhere, like literally. So you feel the same feeling as a backpacker when you were in the pandemic in Australia. That you know, like you this like selected group. You
Yeah.
only you're only you just feel special, you know. There's no many around. And with Perth, you feel the same. This is the only big city in Western Australia.
Yeah.
And you know, you feel like this thing that is the city is growing, is developing. You're part of it. You know, you feel part of the development.